have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing. This rings true because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard, and you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, and if you're not having fun doing it, you're gonna give up.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of John's Entitled Podcast, a partner of MoshPitNation.com. This episode's guest is Jason Bold, drummer for Bullet for My Valentine, and you may also remember him from a little band called Pitchshifter. And with me, as always, shifting the pitch, is Mr. Daniel Terry. How are you doing this evening?
Doing good, man. I'm pumped up. I'm sitting here with my Pitchshifter cassettes. I'm ready to go. And, a little bit about Bullet. That's fine, too.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. In light of, by the time this goes up, there is a little snafu with me uploading the wrong file for the Johnny McBee episode from the Browning. I want to thank Alfonso Seville of Heartsick for, when that happens, he likes to text me, "Where's Dan?" He always asks where you are. So that always usually leads me to believe that, shit, I uploaded the wrong file because Dan's not on it.
Well, we got a thing going on the side, so, he's very concerned about that,
Yeah, but thanks to Alfonso for letting me know that. What was also kind of nice was Johnny shared the episode pretty much right away of me posting it, and I actually had someone on Twitter reach out to me who's like, "No, where did it go? What happened?" And I was like, "Oh, people actually give a shit." I've never had that happen.
It's crazy, isn't it? Like that moment you go from nobody's listening to this to, oh shit, people are listening to this. So I gotta, get my ass in gear. Yeah.
Yeah. So I got home, fixed that, took care of that. But so in light of Louder Than Life festival being canceled, I was able to finagle some interviews. This episode with Jason being one of them. They were scheduled to play Louder Than Life, and sadly, at the festival, I wouldn't have been able to get anyone because they had already been booked solid for the time that they had to depress. But fortunately for me, I was able to get something with Jason. And, it was kind of fun because in prepping a few days before the show, I was trying to think of some fun things to ask Jason. And once I had remembered that he was in Pitchshifter, I was like, oh boy, they're getting ready to do a 20th anniversary show for Pitchshifter.com, the record, that is. And that'd be really weird to celebrate a website.
Yeah, you have to kind of be in on the band to understand that title.
Yeah, I just realized that. But it's one of those things where it just made me wonder, with a lot of these bands, coming back and so forth, it's like, oh shit, is potentially there going to be a Pitchshifter reunion?
That would be cool, man. I would love to see those guys. I'd drive. I would drive far. I'm typically I'll drive 4 hours maximum to see any band, and I'd love to see them get back together, even for just a reunion tour or something. I'd be totally up for that.
Yeah, it definitely made me wonder though if there's just going to be any new music as a whole, because a lot of times that's what happens, with these things, is that a reunion tour happens, everyone's super stoked on it. And then it just turns into a full-on, you know what, guys? Let's just let's get in a room. Let's jam some ideas. Let's see what happens. And
when a band breaks up, all you remember is the negative, and then everybody gets together, and you're like, dude, we had fun doing this, and I've seen that happen with, God, I can't even count anymore how many bands now. It literally it always turns into, either a new album or at the very least a worldwide tour or something that ends up lasting for a really long time.
Yeah. No, it was a lot of fun. And then, the other thing too that was kind of interesting is, Bullet's put out a new record, Gravity, and it's been interesting to see the reception to it, because a lot of people actually, I just did a interview with Porter McKnight as of when we're recording this, probably 15-20 minutes ago, and it is one of those things where when I was looking at Atreyu's socials leading up to the interview, I saw someone go, "This is Bullet for My Valentine, take notice, this is how you change your sound and do it correctly." And I was just like, huh. So it's interesting to have seen the fans' reaction to the record, and as you'll hear in the interview, Jason kind of was like, we tried to make presumably a record that the fans would have wanted, it just sounded forced, and it wasn't there. And to me, that was really admirable that he said that. I don't know if any of the dudes have said that, like, outright. Like, yeah, we tried writing, like, just a heavy, aggressive record, and it just was not working.
Yeah, and that's honestly, like, a big issue for a band like Bullet for My Valentine, because, I mean, they've had, I mean, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 records before that, and it's one of those, like, they've always been kind of metal with some other influences thrown in there. So, like, you get to album 6, and it's like, you know, I could see the mindset going into the studio. We're fucking worldwide metal band. We're gonna put out some aggressive shit. We're gonna love it. It's gonna be great. And you're in there for an hour, 2 hours, and you're like, this just sounds like it. Either at best it sounds just like our old shit, or at worst it sounds like a really boring version of our old shit. You know?
Yeah, I think that's the tough part about being in a band for as long as Bullet has, or even like a band like Atreyu, or like any of these bands really that we've been having on lately, is you just get to the point where the fans either aren't willing to grow with you, or all they want is the old thing, and it's just one of those things where the band can't do that, because eventually either all you're going to do is like, well, this just sounds like a shitty version of the Poison, or this just sounds like, you know, like they tried to do Temper again, and, you know, like, it's like, so you're either going to be compared to the thing that you already did that apparently the fans wanted, but not really, or you grow and then everyone bitches like, well, this isn't the Bullet I got into from the Poison, and it's like, well, that was fucking, Jesus, I think I was like still in high school.
You should have been off the train when Scream Aim Fire came out then.
I guess, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, if that's your fucking Poison, you know, like, honestly, like, I it's hard because I'm very much the same way a lot of the times. I'm like, fuck it. I always say shit like, this band's not even recognizable anymore, or, you know, or whatever. But it just goes to show that metal fans, especially, almost more so than other fans of other kinds of music, are very like, we don't know what we want. Like, you know, do we want Metallica to release Master of Puppets over and over and over and over again? No, that's not really what we want, because we're going to get tired that the band sounds the same. So then they show up with something like a Reload, and we're like, oh, bullshit. You know, like, we just, as a metal fan myself, I just don't know what I want most of the time. I only know what I want after I hear it. And Gravity, man, you know, it's doing well. You know, I think I'm pretty surprised.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised too with how well the record seemingly is doing. And, you know, I saw the show later that evening, and the show did really well. It sold really well, and
yeah, and I haven't heard like really that much negative stuff. I've heard a few negative things from fans, like individual fans.
Right.
But, like, publication-wise, it's doing great. You know, I didn't have any complaints with it, and I'm pretty hard to please most of the time, you know?
Yeah, I think that speaks to more of what Jason was saying, though, which was that they wrote what they were comfortable and wanted to write, what felt good to them. And I think that will always stand out. Like, I mean, we talked to Wilson dudes a while ago, and they put out a record that doesn't sound anything like any of the records they've ever done. But the thing is they are, it's a term I keep using with everyone we've been talking to lately, they're unapologetically themselves. And I think that's the thing Bullet's doing on this record. I think they were just unapologetically who they are and who they wanted to be and write what they wanted to write. And I think it adds to a more cohesive experience as opposed to just shoving shit in there that, like, oh, we need the heavy song, so here it is. And that's commendable. And I think it even goes back to, you know, talking with Jason about Pitchshifter. Pitchshifter was a band that was so far ahead of its fucking time. And like I was talking with Jaden from Siler, it's like, that was the thing I loved about nu metal. Everyone just went for it. Whatever it was, whether it was industrial, whether it was in combining a bunch of different styles together, everyone just went for whatever they wanted to. It was probably one of the most creatively freeing times for hard rock, metal, whatever you want to call it. And Pitchshifter was definitely at the forefront of that, with that kind of, you know, every record was different, whether they had industrial tinges, whether they kind of went more, I guess, more nu metal with like the samples and the different stuff they were doing and the down-tuned guitars. But I mean, it's like, I don't know. It's interesting to kind of to know and see when bands like to see someone like Jason who was a part of something big, 20 some odd years ago, and then see what he's doing now, where he's in another band that's kind of changing the game up a little bit. Like I think that's interesting to me.
Yeah, for sure. And we're seeing just an explosion, like you said, just lately of people not bowing to the tropes anymore, like just feeling like they just have to be whatever. Because, like, pleasing fans is like trying to please investors or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, after a while, you're almost going to, if that's how you choose to live your life or how you choose to run your career, you're going to eventually become resentful of those fans or of those, or if you're working a job, you become resentful of your boss,
right?
Because they want you to, they want you to do something maybe that's not that interesting or, something along those lines. And it's really cool now to see bands, because bands did it all through the 90s too, like in nu metal. You're right. It's so funny that the umbrella that encompasses nu metal is actually like rap metal, industrial, and then just a lot of the times, like you look at a band like Cold or something, and it was just hard rock. It wasn't even really, necessarily nu metal, other than just like a couple of little things, or maybe it's the way they dressed or whatever it was. And people that actually care about their music don't really or shouldn't really give a shit about that stuff. Pitchshifter being a prime example, like they weren't satisfied with just being an industrial band.
No, they weren't
at all, and and I do love those first releases. Those are the ones that I got sitting on my table right now with me is those first two releases. But the thing is that like Pitchshifter was an enjoyable band for me because, when I listen to their later albums, I'm not listening to industrial, not the style, the actual album industrial. Like I'm not hearing that 20 years later.
Right.
And that just goes to show, but like what I'm hearing is still good. It's not like compromised in any way. So I mean, they're a testament to that, and seeing a band like Bullet for My Valentine, who for a while was a band that I kind of considered to be a little bit more musically stagnant. So for a band or a person like me, an album like Gravity is a welcome change and kind of a good way for me to jump back on board with the band again.
Yeah, I think it's a very exciting time to kind of jump back and be a Bullet fan. It kind of reminds you of why you got into them in the first place, which is kind of their infusion of a few different styles and sounds and genres, and how well they were able to execute them. So I think if you haven't been a fan of Bullets for a little bit, I think this would be the time to actually get into it. And speaking of getting into it, let's jump into my chat with Jason Bold of Bullet for My Valentine, and we'll talk to you afterwards. So I have the pleasure this early evening of talking to Jason Bold, a Bullet for My Valentine, here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, on a rather dreary day. How are you doing this early evening?
I'm good, thanks, man. Yeah, just chilling out, and just got off the bus the first time today, and it's nearly 6 in the evening.
Yeah. How is the time difference for you? I mean, there's
It's crazy. Just talking to Matt, we were down south in Atlanta, and now all of a sudden we're in Grand Rapids, and gone from 30 degrees to 9 degrees. And obviously the time difference as well, 1 minute we're 5 hours behind, then we're 6, and then we've been 9, and we're just totally spun out. That's touring in America.
How long does it take you to get acclimated to the not only the time change, but maybe even the climate change?
It's kind of weird. When we got here 3 weeks ago, been consistently humid and really hot. And back home, it's like a lot cooler. Mm-hmm. But the time change, you never really get over it. never get used to it. Just waking up at like 4 in the morning, then drifting back off, and that's the way it is,
Yeah,
we're just a mess by the by Christmas arrives.
Yeah, having done some recent, I won't call it touring, but just vacationing and getting to be in different time zones, like going, to Atlanta, going to Texas, going to, all over the place. Yeah. It's been really weird. And even my wife and I have been talking about going over to Finland in the next year. And just thinking about how long some of the flights are going to take us to go to some of the places we're looking at, I'm just like, I don't even want to do it just for that alone, because I don't think I can handle being on a flight as long as some of these flights would end up really being, because I don't know. I think major props to all of you guys who have to deal with some of those like 12-hour, 15-hour flights, because I couldn't do it.
Well, if you go to Finland, you're not dealing only with weather and time, but light.
Oh.
Because it would be dark all the time.
Well, I'm fine with that. I don't really like light.
Yeah, so depending on what time of year you go. But yeah, traveling is part of the job, and it's the bit I hate the most about it.
Kind of speaking to the new album that you guys recently put out, Gravity, I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about, this is the first record that you've been on at this point in Bullet for My Valentine. Certainly not a stranger to the recording process as a whole, but I kind of wanted to talk about maybe the transition of being a fill-in person at the time to going into writing, because I feel like, in light of the Hired Gun documentary is a great example where it's like you're with somebody and you don't know how long it's going to be or in what capacity. Yep. And so I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about the transition of being the fill-in live person to actually starting to have to come up with ideas and writing new material with the guys. What was that like?
Yeah, it was good. I love working with different people. Being a hired gun, as you say, for 18 years, I'm kind of used to it. We're used to working with how different people work, and there's some strange personalities out there. I've worked with a lot of strange personalities, and you kind of adapt to it, and it's a shock at first, so it was quite an easy transition. But obviously being a hired gun and then being a band member, then I get involved in a lot of the politics in the band and all the other stuff surrounding the band, so I'm more involved in that, and sometimes it really sucks and sometimes it's really good, but it's just, there's always a side that you have to keep an eye on, whether you're a hired gun or part of a band. You can't brush the politics under the carpet. You've got to get on with it. But in terms of writing, though, on that front, it was great writing with Matt in the studio. I've written with him before.
Axwound, yeah.
For Axwound, and it's kind of weird because part of me thought we were going to write a metal album instead of Gravity, the way it turned out. But we did try doing that, and it just felt stale, It just didn't feel like nothing new was being brought to the table, but just playing the standard metal riff. So we just, for our own sanity and excitement, if you like, we needed to do something different, which we did.
Speaking to that, how hard is it to maybe want to voice, I don't want to say frustrations, but how hard is it to maybe want to speak up and just kind of be like, I don't know if I'm feeling this, but you're the newer guy in the band, and like you're saying, the politics side of things, where sometimes it's like, can I say that I'm not really digging where this is going? Like, is that kind of hard when you're working on something that's kind of changing?
It is, yeah, because there was a definite divide in the band when we were writing. We kind of felt, all of us, that when we were jamming the metal stuff, there's something not right here. It's not feeling cool. So therefore, we didn't know where we were going until 6 months in the writing process, and I knew what Matt was getting at with added more electronic. I mean, there's not a ton of electronic stuff on the album, it's just basically big spacey grooves,
right?
And bigger songs with bigger vocal melodies. It took Padge and Jamie a while to get their heads into that, but they bought into it. In the end, we're all together, we're all playing the songs live, and now in the live environment, it's all working really well with the older stuff as well,
With the, I'm going to call it a change, because I feel like Bullet's one of those bands that's always kind of incorporated a lot of different things throughout their career.
Yeah.
Even on the first record, on The Poison, there was different songwriting examples on that. So the thing, though, that I kind of wonder, with a band being around as long as they have, having a rich lineage that Bullet does, coming in as one of the newer guys to write on this record, is it kind of a little bit more added pressure to live up to what's already been there in front of you?
Not really, because to have that mindset of living up to what was before means that you're going to ultimately copy yourself, which is not good.
Right.
That's when you could stay on the same level and disappear down the rabbit hole. So no, I think that the pressures it's a privilege, to challenge ourselves. Ultimately, you have to write for yourself because we're the ones that have to go out and perform it. And if we write just to keep a handful of bitchy, I won't even call them fans, but people that will always knock what you're doing, then you're not doing it for the right reasons.
Right.
So we have to write for ourselves. We have to perform it and convince people that we believe in something. And at the end of the day, Gravity is a very honest album of where the band is at the moment. Now, next album, I haven't got a clue what could happen. We might go totally metal. It might be a same sort of album again. I don't know, because that's like 2 years away, and we don't know what our minds are going to be like, if we have any minds left.
Kind of shifting gears a little bit. So on the record, I'm kind of one of those people, I don't know much about production, in an actual technical standpoint of, doing it, but I do really enjoy good production. And something that I always pay attention to is drum tones. I like good sounding drum tones, and I know a lot of times, you look at someone like John Feldman. I've always said John Feldman has a great knack for making an overproduced raw record. It's so overproduced you can tell it, but it still has this raw vulnerability to it. And so, Carl Brown is not a name that I'm super familiar with. I think he basically works solely out of the UK and with a lot of those bands.
Co-produced a Trivium album.
Okay.
With Colin Richardson.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I saw that Colin did something on this record too, or one of the tracks on the record, I believe, didn't he? Or maybe that was a
Don't Need
mastering
You.
thing.
I think he had a hand in producing that, but no, I think it was pretty much all Carl.
Okay. The thing that I was gonna say though is I was really impressed with the drum tones that are on the record, and so I know sometimes that can be either just an afterthought, yeah, it sounds great. And sometimes it kind of tells how much time is actually spent on a drum tone, because those are the first things you lay down typically. So how long did it take for you guys to dial in this drum tone?
Carl is so meticulous with drum sounds, as am I, and we spent a long time on it. We were in one of the best studios in the UK, Metropolis, which has an amazing drum room. And we were changing snare heads every two takes rather, because we'd lose the pitch or the tone. The drums were tuned in sympathy with each other. Okay. Which makes the drum sound like a melodic instrument. And then the actual tone that was produced, I had a few comments off people saying, "Oh, the drums sound electric." It's like, no, they're not electric. It's a real drum tone. I used 2 different snare drums. One sounds kind of dance orientated, or urban, as I'd like to call it. Okay. Which is on the track Piece of Me in the verse sections. Okay. But it's the way I play as well, because I've got a background. I love dance music. It influences my drumming, and I could lend a bit of that to some of the songs. Piece of Me again being a good example. And with the kick drum, we didn't want to go for a typical clicky kick drum sound.
Kick drum, yeah.
Bullet's done that before, and the type of songs on the album just didn't warrant that kind of tone, like a wet fish slapping a worktop. Well, fishes are wet anyway, aren't they? So yeah, it was just a bit more of a thumpy kick drum sound, and we underlaid it with an 808. Okay. Sample.
Were you using a sub kick? I know a lot of bands are starting to use. Oh, okay.
Just normal bass drum tone. Yeah.
Yeah, because I noticed a lot of bands now are starting to use those sub kicks, and even back a while ago, something that was pretty interesting to me, talking more about drummers and stuff, was Brandon Saller from Atreyu on, I think it was Lead Sail and Paper Anchors or something, was using a 26-inch kick drum, just playing around with how percussive it sounded and different it sounded from everything else. Yeah. And if you go back and listen to that record, his kick drum sounds, it's noticeable that it's different. Yeah. So to me, I always enjoy people who are willing to do interesting things like that, have something that's very identifiable to them. Even Vinnie Paul had a very unique drum sound, and it was a lot of him knowing his tones, how to scoop out the mids on the tones, and how he used his he used the backside of the sticks basically. Most people are using the handle, and so it's just always been interesting to me to see how little variances that people probably aren't even paying attention to, whether it be the tuning to the drums. I mean, a lot of people probably don't even know you can tune drums.
Yeah, I know. What, you tune drums? What? But yeah, they're a musical instrument, you know. Yeah, it was a really good contemporary kit sound that had production to make it modern and fit in with the electronic soundscapes that are in the tracks.
Talking a little bit more about the tour, as I kind of had mentioned before recording, you know, I've been to a lot of shows over the years, and something that I don't think a lot of people understand is how long tours take to book, and how long in advance they are booked, and
how bad the routing is sometimes.
I had a friend that was on tour. They came up here and then went right back to Pittsburgh. And then we're coming back to Wisconsin a day later. And I was like, who the fuck routed you?
I know.
Like, this is terrible routing. But all that aside, you know, I think there are a lot of things that factor into tours before a tour is even started. And unfortunately, Kyle Pavone of We Came as Romans, the vocalist, recently just sadly passed away. And when that news hit, I kind of was wondering if the tour was going to be scrapped as a result, because, I mean, that's a big support slot that's, you know, now suddenly up in arms. And, you know, we've seen it with at the time, Linkin Park and Of Mice and Men tour had the same thing, where Austin ended up having some issues, and they had to back out, and then basically the whole tour was scrapped, more or less. So it was one of those things where I was wondering, like, you know, you guys don't live here in the States, so it's not a simple thing of like, oh, we'll just get our buddies here and everything's good to go. Like,
yeah,
you have work visas presumably and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of stuff ahead of the time of the tour even starting that goes into effect. So was there ever any worries of, oh shit, like, now what's going to happen?
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, when it happened with We Came as Romans, we obviously were in shock, and the way we were going to roll we're going to keep the slot open for them if they wanted to do it, and totally understand if they didn't. Otherwise, if they didn't, we would have just carried on with us and Bad Omens.
Okay.
So that's what the vibe would, you know, on a business level, it's very hard to cancel a tour at the last minute. So in that situation, it was just trying to deal with it respectfully and go, oh, right, okay, we'll have to get another support band now. It was like, well, no, you know, I mean, it's Bullet's tour. So, you know, having a rocking support band is a bonus, and it's a massive bonus that they decided to do it after all. And it's one of the nicest tours I've done in terms of support bands being just nice, normal people, and there being absolutely no ego around. So I couldn't be happier with them, you know.
That's awesome. You know, it's one of those where sometimes you hear of things happening and people get tours taken away, or because it needs to go on. And so it's just the downfall of sometimes the business side of this thing that we all love, whether it be performing, going to concerts, whatever. So it's just one of those, like, as I was kind of in the weeks leading up to this show and this tour, it was like, I wonder what's going to happen with this, because, like I said, there's been plenty of examples very recently of these things kind of throwing a tour in upheaval, and it's like, well, shit, okay. On to something a little more positive and maybe a little out of left field for you. Pitchshifter. So the band has been dormant for
2006, I think, was the last time the band did anything.
Yeah, I was trying to think if it's been at least over 10. I know it's been over 10 years. But the interesting thing is the band has been somewhat active on socials and even announcing, I don't know if it's a tour or just a couple of dates in November. And obviously with you doing this tour and the other touring that potentially you have, not able to play those shows. But, you know, I kind of wanted to know, you know, what's going on with Pitchshifter at this point?
I don't know, you know. I mean, I know I'm in touch with Mark, the bass player, a lot. He's one of my best friends. And, yeah, they basically got 6 gigs. I think they're celebrating the release of Pitchshifter.com that came out 20 years ago. Yep. So they're, you know, it's like an anniversary tour of that album. And I don't think there's anything else to it other than they just want to get together and play some shows. And I think the demand has been really good in the UK so far. Pitchshifter was always a political band, and there's so much going on political now in the world. I think John, the singer, will have a field day, you know, with his on-stage banter.
Well, what's been really interesting to me is this resurgence of nu metal, as it's been, and I know Pitchshifter indirectly doesn't seem like the typical nu metal band. I would say you have more, and obviously with the member being in this band as well, but sort of the leanings of like the Prodigy, like where it's like there are a lot of different styles incorporated. But even I would say some people would probably say the Prodigy is a nu metal band, even though it's not entirely correct either. But it's been interesting to see this new love again of Pitchshifter, and you know, like I was at my friend's baby shower and we had iTunes on and started playing old stuff, and that came on and I was like, oh man, remember when? And you just start telling all these old stories. But what's been interesting as a 34-year-old and listening, I remember it's like there was a long time where it wasn't okay to be like, man, I'm throwing on Pitchshifter. Like, do you remember this record? And let's talk about. No, that band sucks. This music sucks, and everyone tried to distance themselves from it. Yeah. So, as someone who is involved in that scene, has it kind of been interesting for you to see this resurgence?
Yeah, it just you know, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, people are some really fickle bastards. You know, like I remember at the time when we played the Ozfest in the year 2000, we were the only band to have like full-on drum loops and weird noises and dance-orientated things, and you know, people were into Godsmack and Disturbed back then, and as they still are, unfortunately. But you know, at the time it was just wow, what the fuck is this? And you go to places like New York, they'd understand it, you know, where there's more multi-genre cities, if you like, but you know, in the southern parts of America, it was like, you know, what are these faggots doing? But yeah, now everyone's using electronic stuff. It's like normal. So Mark always said, bass player from Pitchshifter, you know, we should have T-shirts that say we are from the future on, because we just always seem to be too far ahead of people's tastes. And ultimately, I think what not finished the band off, that made the band end, was every album was different. Yeah, it changed so much. Like you mentioned the nu metal thing, and you know, Pitchshifter.com came out. It was more proper drum and bass. You knew what you were getting. And then Deviant came out, and it was like nu metal with a bit of drum and bass. And then the next album was more industrial rock. And I think it ended up confusing people.
Yeah, that's something I was just talking to Jaden Panesso from Siler, and was talking to him because they're kind of one of these resurgent bands coming through. And you know, something I was telling him was, I was like, you know, nu metal as a tag encompassed so much. Like, it wasn't it was kind of nice because it didn't have all these subgenres to it. It was just, oh, it's nu metal. Yeah. So nu metal could be industrial, could be, you know, kind of like the gothic kind of sound, could be straight ahead rock and roll, could be, you know, could be all these things, and that's kind of what I really loved about it. And bands like Pitchshifter, I think, were definitely a sign of the times of not being afraid to be themselves. And I think that's what I miss most about that era of music, is that everyone was so unapologetically afraid to be what they wanted to be. Yeah. And for that, I think it spawned a lot of creative output. Yeah.
Again, you know, the band just wore themselves on their sleeves, and come up against a lot of nasty people in our career, like who didn't understand us, you know, and were, you know, maybe, I don't know, just didn't understand what we were about musically. We were just too far off their radar.
And lastly, while I have you for the last couple of minutes, where can everyone follow you on the socials?
Yeah, I got an Instagram account. You know, I keep it updated now and then. I got a YouTube channel. When I feel like it, I put up drum videos. But yeah, I'm not a super social media guy. I like to have a life outside of screens, and kind of pisses me off how people live their life in screens nowadays, you know, because I think it can kill people's drive to be creative and to just create things organically. You know, to engage in any kind of activity whether you're a kid learning a musical instrument or an artist learning to paint, you know, scientists have proven you need 20-30 minutes of attention on that subject, where you've got to be prepared for things to go wrong before you get into that mental state of flow. Mm-hmm. And the problem, you know, with electronic devices is people want stuff instant now. Yeah. And it's not good for the brain. So It's just in moderation, isn't it?
Yes.
Don't want to get too preachy.
No, that's actually why I started doing the podcast, because I missed this from my life. Like, I don't get this very often anymore. Getting to sit down with someone.
Talking face to face.
Face to face. And if you haven't noticed, I pretty much haven't looked at anything other than you the whole
Yeah.
time I've been talking. So, lastly, I always like to end these episodes out with a song. So what would you like me to play it out to? Doesn't have to be a Bullet song. Can be maybe something you've been jamming on the bus the last 3 weeks.
A song?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. You've put me on the spot there. I'm going to say a song that I've just been listening to, Run by the Foo Fighters.
Awesome song.
I love that album.
Yeah. Awesome. Jason, thank you again for taking the time and looking forward to the show
Thank you
tonight.
very much, John.
So that was my chat with Jason Bold of Bullet for My Valentine in a very, very nice green rooms of 20 Monroe Live. I have to say, out of all the venues I've been through in GR, those are some of the nicest. Granted, it's one of the newest venues in town, but I think it lent itself to a really good acoustics as far as not having bands playing in the background, not having a bunch of people being loud or whatever. And Dan, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, it sounded great, man. Like, I could hear everything clear as day. Because at first it was actually so clear, I was kind of like, did they go somewhere like private and talk? I mean, you did, obviously, but not like within the venue. I was like, did they go to like a coffee shop or something where like there were no other customers, or what was the deal? And that was a fun little interview, man. Like I've been saying, like, I was a huge Pitchshifter fan, so I was excited to get to hear the interview. And and again, in light of that new record, I've become more of a Bullet fan again, and no, it was definitely cool. I really liked him getting into the writing process and basically just like explaining why, like, this is why that record sounds like it, and we're totally all about it.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. When you know that you're getting about 15-20 minutes with somebody, it's really hard to prep for that, because 15-20 minutes doesn't seem like a lot of time. And admittedly, sometimes it is not. But I definitely think, in light of the fact that I've had quite a bit of interviews that are that length, I've gotten better at figuring out how to formulate a pattern, or not a pattern, but a narrative that works, that you can kind of get into. You get a lot of information out of it, and you kind of can meander around, get some extra cool stories, but it's not any one thing that you're going to go on a deep dive on. And to me, it was like, okay, like, let's talk about the new record. Let's talk about you going from being like a fill-in hired gun to now writing with the band on the new record. The expectations you put on yourself, or that maybe the fans have for you to do that with a band that's got as rich of a history as Bullet does. And, kind of talking about the drum tones, because, I mean, as you mentioned, there are some interesting drum tones on this record. I didn't realize he actually used different snares at different points, but I mean, it just makes sense. And like, when he started saying all that, I was like thinking about Pitchshifter records, and I was like, that makes sense that you would vibe better with something like that, because you have experience kind of playing multiple different kind of genres, even sometimes within one song.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, some experimentation is kind of expected, whenever he's got that background, because, I mean, Pitchshifter was all over the place, and now Bullet, it kind of is getting a little bit of that tinge to them as well. Although it's kind of weird, because for as much as everybody comments that the record sounds super different, I think it still very much sounds like Bullet for My Valentine. Like, it has different elements to it, but it's not like, whoa, who's this?
Right. Right. You wouldn't put it in and be like, I have no idea who this is.
Right.
Yeah, and I think, something, too, that makes it a little easier, and I think, it's not to cheaply plug your podcast, but I think when you kind of do a discography run-through in a very short amount of time, like you've said, it gives you a perspective that I don't think you get when you have gaps of time in between records, where, maybe you haven't listened to the first record in a while, or you haven't listened to the newest record, the one before it, in a while. But sort of like, it's kind of interesting, because I was equating this to binge watching TV shows. Like, when some people are like, oh, well, this season was so much better than this one, or this one didn't make any sense. But it's like I remember Orange is the New Black, when my wife and I started binge watching that before the new season came out. And I have a good memory, so I can typically kind of float in and out of those things, and it's fine because I have a good memory for what happened. But she would be like, "Oh, I forgot this happened," and then I'm like, "Well, did you like this season?" She goes, "Oh yeah, it was a lot better than I remember it being." And it's like, well, because now you're watching the story all at once, as opposed to
Right.
like, here's your 10 episodes, here's your 10 hours, and then you're waiting a year, and then you get the other 10 or whatever. You're not looking at it as a single entity anymore. You're looking at it as the continuation of this story that's going, like, longer form version of a story. And I think when you look at Gravity compared to a lot of the other Bullet records, I think you'll see some of the experimentation. And I mean, it was, like I said earlier, it was there all along. Like, I mean, you have slower, softer songs on The Poison. You have different stuff going on throughout the rest of the records. I think this is the most adventurous at one point that they've been, but
Yeah.
I'm not. Nothing on the record was just like, huh, never saw that coming.
Yeah, like if I was doing a full discography binge on Bullet, I mean, listening to all that stuff together, it would all, like, some of the stuff that people think is so different and so new and so changed is really not.
Yeah,
You know, I mean, it is. There are new and interesting elements on that record, like there are, but like it's not like, you know, like I was saying earlier, it's not like it was contrived in some way. Like it's what we could expect from the wheelhouse of the band, anyway. But you know, you've also got some fresh new blood in there and some experienced fresh new blood at that.
yes.
So you know
Yeah.
that I think that's really what you can take away from it.
Something else I want to take a moment to talk about. So for those who don't know, and I think you'll hear me mention these when I do the live in-person chats, I do literally write everything down that I'm going to ask somebody. And a lot of times I will write and rewrite my questions. I'll have various questions that I'll scrap because as I've kind of learned, you're not going to write something down, and when you look at it, as you're rereading it back to yourself, you're like, that's a bullshit question, or that makes no fucking sense. Scrap that. And you learn how to shape your questions better, I think, when you're actually literally able to look at them. Plus, on the flip side of that is, at that point, you're not going to invest any time to write something that's not worth the time.
No,
I would hope.
yeah, no, you're totally right.
So in that, and I think I feel like I did a good job of explaining why I asked this question. But for those who may or may not know, I live in Grand Rapids, Michigan. There are plenty of bands that are from this area that are of name value. We Came as Romans being one of those bands. When the news of Kyle's passing hit, I'm not saying that it didn't affect any other scene or any other state or any other people differently than it would have anybody else. But I will say, for us here in Michigan, for me knowing people that know Kyle, that know that band, that have toured with that band, it's different. And every time I was writing these questions, I didn't not write that question down because, as I said in the interview, there are so many behind the scene things that I have come to learn from booking shows, from having friends who tour. There are so many things that do and don't happen for the dumbest fucking reasons. And if I could tell you all the things that were supposed to happen, that almost happened, if you listen to podcasts and hear all the things that almost happened and why tours were taken away and so forth, what happened to Kyle and what happened to We Came as Romans, there have been tours that have been canceled for someone not dying, just getting sick because they couldn't replace the big support band. And at the end of the day, you know, Bullet is a band that has to get work visas. It has to do so much more to come tour here in the States that turning down a tour or changing it in any way, shape, or form is a huge thing for this tour. So with We Came as Romans, it wouldn't have surprised me if someone at the top would have been like, you know, I'm really sorry, guys, but unfortunately, this is a business and we need to move forward. So we're going to fill your spot with somebody else, or we're going to move up the opener, and we're Bad Omens, and we're going to find another opener for the tour, and we're going to continue on. Good luck and hopefully maybe in the future we can do something down the road. And that wouldn't have surprised me. But the fact that the band reached out to them because it's their headlining tour and they have some say, which I think speaks volumes too to how invested the guys are as the band of Bullet for My Valentine in their business, that there was never a question that it was not going to be We Came as Romans supporting them on this tour. It was up to We Came as Romans to decide what they wanted to do, and the band was going to back them whatever decision they made. And to me, like I said, I've heard so many stories where, like I mentioned, that Linkin Park of Mice and Men tour, Austin got sick, tour went away. Like the whole tour crumbled basically as a result of it happening so close to when the tour was going to start. And that's a band that just basically had a vocal issue with their singer, not a death, you know.
Yeah.
And I also, if you don't follow me on the socials, I posted on Twitter. I'm not the biggest We Came as Romans fan. I never really have been. I admire what they do. I think they're a great representation for our Michigan metal scene and kind of putting their own spin on it. I think they are a good extension of what bands like, you know, Still Remains and For the Fallen Dreams and a lot of these other bands that have gotten successful in our area in that genre have done. That being said, I knew it was going to be an interesting show because it's the first show here in Michigan that they've played since this happened. And the energy in the room was fucking incredibly electric. During the band's set, to look around and see people just having this cathartic release, to see the band just going harder than I think. I've seen the band plenty of times. I think this is the hardest I've ever seen them play. They literally left it all on the stage and put everything into every song. And hearing, I don't know the other vocalist, the guy who typically screams, I don't know his name, but hearing him sing Kyle's parts, you know, I don't know if a lot of people know he could sing already pretty well, but to hear him with kind of this extra strain, emotional strain, singing some of these songs and really hearing the words that Kyle was supposed to be singing, and in light of him not being there anymore, it was just very surreal. Like I mean, Dan can actually see me I'm not even looking at anything. I'm just kind of like remembering the vibe of the room in my head right now. It was really fucking emotional. I ended up crying a bunch, and I did not expect it. But like I said, it's hard to. I don't think you can be in that room and understand the severity of what happened and what that band means to so many people, especially us here in Michigan, and to see just everything, the way the band played, the way the room was reacting to it, the random every couple of songs, you know, Kyle chants. Unprovoked. It was insane. It's definitely one of those things, like, I don't think I'm ever going to forget being in that room for that show. And I remember texting Bullets TM, and I was like, I don't know if all the other shows have been this intense for their sets, but I don't know how any of you guys are able to not get choked up for their set, because it's so overwhelming and powerful. And yeah, so I mean, if you're going out to the show and you are even maybe a casual fan of We Came as Romans, do yourself a favor and go see them. Like I said, I can't speak to any other show if it's only going to be our show that's like that, but it seems like every show's pretty special and unique for its own thing. But for anybody, the whole point of me bringing that up, for anybody who kind of thinks it's distasteful for me to ask that question, just know that for me, like I said, every time I wrote these questions to ask Jason, I kept basically in it. It just wrote itself. I had to know. I had to know what it was like for them, because I think that's a very real thing that they have to go through, and I don't know if anyone else is going to ever ask them that, and I don't know if it's disrespectful to ask that question. But for me, it was something that I really wanted to know the answer to, and I think shows, like I said, I think in him answering the question as honestly as he did, I think it really does show how much the guys that make up the band really run and have a say in what happens with their band, their tour, their whatever, and even goes all the way back to Gravity as a whole. I think even in the answer to that question about We Came as Romans kind of speaks to the band just being unflinchingly themselves and being comfortable in who they are and making the decisions that they want to make. Yeah, sorry, I got really deep there.
Yeah. And I can't identify as personally, but I didn't think that it was inappropriate to ask by any stretch. I mean, I think that's something that, I disrespectfully would be getting so personal or coming in with a douchey tone about it or something, and everything, seemed genuine. And I think that's why you ended up actually getting an answer to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess I didn't think of that.
Yeah, I mean, typically if we come off and we're interviewing somebody and we come off like douchebags, we're not going to get any of our questions answered.
It's true.
And so you have to come from it from a genuine place. But and I understand. I can't identify with it, but I understand.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very intense.
Yeah.
I don't even know if like it is conveyed. I don't know. It's obviously stuck with me since the show happened. And it's I haven't been to a show since, but I don't know. It's one of the, like I said, it's an experience I'm never gonna forget. I don't know. I feel like potentially going to see the band the next time is gonna be hard because I don't know. I just, it was really weird. A friend of mine that we went to go see the band with, she was like, "I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready for this show," and I kept thinking to myself, I was like, "That's a very silly thing to say." Like, I don't know. I guess there's never been a band that I've loved, I guess, that doesn't have their original vocalist that I've seen since that person's left the band.
Sure.
I mean, I've seen Scott Stapp. I've seen Stone Temple Pilots with Scott Weiland. I've seen Linkin Park with Chester. I've seen, a lot of the bands I can think of with people passing away recently. I've seen all of those bands with their original members intact. And I mean, I know Stone Temple Pilots are going on. Alice in Chains is one of the few I can think of that I have. Actually, I take it back. I guess Alice in Chains is a band that I have seen where I think the stuff they're doing now is just as good, if not a little bit better than what they were doing, but is a prime example of a band who took some time away, figured out who they were, what they wanted to be, and took another stab at it and is doing it brilliantly. And maybe for We Came as Romans, like, that will be the same sentiment for me, where maybe I wasn't necessarily the biggest fan. I could appreciate what they were doing before, but it's going to be this new stuff that's going to have me really interested in and wanting to be a fan because of what I experienced at this show.
Yeah, I haven't been to... So I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
I haven't... No, I was about to say I haven't been to a show in a while, but I guess I did go to a show pretty recently, but not in my hometown, so it's hard to... I don't know where I was going with that. I'm sorry, man.
Yeah, so, I mean, I didn't mean to kind of bring the vibe of the interview or this whole thing down. Definitely not my intention, but... No,
but it's important. We need to take the time.
Yeah.
As a society, we need to take the time.
Yeah.
Everybody's just so like, well, now what? Well, now what? Well, now what? And it's like, you got to think about the people that are involved in this, the actual other human beings that are dealing with this, It can't just be, well, what's next? Yeah. It's my 2 cents.
Yeah. I guess in light of the brevity of what I just said, I guess we'll kind of wrap up this episode. So if you would like to follow Jason or Bullet for My Valentine on any of the socials, they're currently out again on the Gravity Tour. The record's already out via Spine Farm Records, so go pick it up and support the band. And the tour will be going on for a little bit longer, and I'm sure there's going to be plenty of touring in support of this record. So if they come to a city near you, go see them. You can definitely get a lot of a whole wide array of the band's catalog. So it's really great to, I mean, right out the gate, like within the first couple of songs, you're getting stuff off the Poison. So they definitely honor the rich legacy of their fans and play a little bit of everything. All that being said, again, if you'd like to keep up with Jason, you can find him on Twitter at Jason_Bold. That's BOWLD. You can find him on Instagram at Jason Bold, all one word. Also follow him on YouTube, youtube.com/C/Jason Bold. Check out his drum covers and stuff like that if you are a drummer or just interested in what he does. It's a good watch. If you would like to keep up with Bullet for My Valentine, it's pretty much just BFMV official everywhere you go. Keep up with them. And Dan, where can people follow you?
You can follow me on Twitter at DiscussMetalDan. You can find me on Facebook under Dan Terry or Daniel Terry. And you can find my other podcast at DiscussMetal.com. You can also send me an email at DiscussMetalDan@gmail.com. So if you can't get a hold of me, it's your fault.
And if you'd like to keep up with our show partner at Moshpit Nation, you can find them at moshpitnation.com. Find them on Facebook at Moshpit Nation, West capital MI. And Twitter and Instagram are simply Moshpit Nation. And if you would like to keep up with our show sponsor, The Bean Bastard, you can find them on Facebook and Instagram at The Bean Bastard, or go over to thebeanbastard.com and pick you up some delicious coffee. And if you would like to keep up with the podcast, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Johnson Title Podcast, tweet at us at Johnson Title Pod, and email us at johnsontitlepod@gmail.com. We are going to end this episode as we always do, and as you heard Jason say, he wanted me to play it out with a great fucking song and an even better video. I mean, this band always has great videos and great songs, so I'm not surprised. But it is Run by the Foo Fighters off of their newest record, Concrete and Gold. If you have not heard it for whatever fucking reason, do yourself a favor, go pick up that record. It slams. You can go check out Dave Grohl doing that whole literally called play, 20-minute of him just building a song on every instrument, because Dave Grohl is the new Lemmy. He is God. This is Run by Foo Fighters. We'll talk to you next time.